The regular season is over, the playoffs are here, wild card weekend is upon us. 4 interesting matchups on tap this week. Would like to talk about them now quickly. Do want to remind you though, we'll preview all these games in great detail here at BETDAQ Tips, so please do check back with us over the next few days for in-depth game previews as well as picks, final decisions on all these games. Do have some general wild card weekend thoughts I'd like to share now though, starting with the Carolina Panthers. Can you believe the Panthers are a playoff team? This is a team that had gone over 2 months without winning a football game. We did our hot seat report article about 4 weeks ago. I believe it was exactly 4 weeks ago now. And we listed Carolina coach Ron Rivera as having one of the hottest seats in the league. At that time, it looked like he was going to be fired at season's end. Now, though, the Panthers have won 4 straight games, including an impressive win over Atlanta last week in the de facto NFC South Championship game. So not only is Carolina in the playoffs, they're hosting a playoff game, and they're a 5.5-point favorite over the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals, we know the deal by now, an 11-win team with an excellent defense, but ever since they lost starting quarterback Carson Palmer 7 weeks ago, they have been terrible offensively. It's actually been 7 straight games the Cardinals have produced fewer than 20 points, and they're facing a Carolina defense this week that is playing their best football right now. We mentioned the Panthers currently riding a 4-game winning streak. Well, they've surrendered 17 points or fewer in each one of those games. And again, we're talking about an Arizona Cardinals team that has gone 7 games without reaching 20 points. So how are the Cardinals going to score in this game? That has to be the first question we ask ourselves. Of course, that's the question we've been asking about the Arizona Cardinals for the last several weeks. How are they going to score? And really, they haven't provided us with many answers. They haven't been able to run the ball all season. Their quarterback situation, as we mentioned, ever since Carson Palmer went down, has been a disaster. They're down to third stringer Ryan Lindley. They've said that Drew Stanton, who of course was Palmer's backup, might be able to play this week. He might be available, though I certainly wouldn't count on it. Stanton's missed the last couple of games. And frankly, even when Stanton was in there, this Arizona offense was not good at all, though I guess Stanton is a better option than Ryan Lindley. Should be said, though, that Lindley did play the best game of his career last week in a loss to the San Francisco 49ers. Still, on the road in the playoffs against the Carolina defense is playing very well right now. Tough to have any confidence in Ryan Lindley. That means if the Cardinals are going to win this game, even if they're going to stay close here, they're going to have to lean on their defense. And it has been a great defense throughout most of the season, especially good up front. They've been vulnerable in the secondary, but they've been great against the run throughout most of the year. I say most of the year because over their last 2 games, the Cardinals have not defended the run very well. They've allowed 473 combined rushing yards in their last 2 games. Now that is critical heading into this week because this Carolina offense, a run-first offense. Cam Newton, not a natural pocket passer. He's not surrounded by a whole lot in terms of pass-catching options. Greg Olsen, his tight end, is his best receiver. In terms of the wideouts, rookie Kelvin Benjamin is his best wideout, but Benjamin dropped 2 crucial passes last week against Atlanta, and again, he is a rookie, so I'm not sure we can depend on him. The Carolina passing game in general, not dependable, but they have been running the ball very well in recent weeks. Jonathan Stewart has really come on over these past 5 games, and like we said, the Cardinals over the last 2 games have had trouble defending the run. They're going to need to fix that here quickly because with their offense, with the Ryan Lindley-led offense, like we mentioned, if the Cardinals are going to stay close in this game, it's going to have to be their defense that does the heavy lifting. I do expect a low-scoring defensive struggle here, and we see a total like 38. That is far and away the lowest total we see of any of these 4 games on Wild Card Weekend, and it would be very, very difficult for me to bet the over, even though it is a total that is below 40. So as of now, I lean towards under 38 in that game. Haven't yet made a final decision in terms of which side, though I will say it's going to be tough for me to lay 5.5 points and back the Panthers. That's a big, big number considering that Carolina really struggles on offense. They're not quite as bad as Arizona on the offensive side of the ball, but the Panthers certainly not explosive on offense. We'll see what that line does over the next few days. It has already moved slightly in the Carolina direction. This line opened at Carolina -4 out in Vegas. It is now Carolina -5 or 5.5 at sportsbooks around the world. As we said, it is Panthers -5.5 at BETDAQ. Very interesting game there, but not the most interesting game of this Saturday. That is the Saturday night game. For my money, the best game of Wild Card Weekend. The Baltimore Ravens traveling to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. Pittsburgh, a 3-point favorite on BETDAQ. 46.5 the total here. These teams, of course, hated rivals. this the best rivalry in the AFC. They played twice this year. They split their 2 games, with each team winning at home. Now, neither one of those games was particularly close. The Ravens won by 20 points in Baltimore. The Steelers responded by winning by 20 points in Pittsburgh. I have a feeling this game is not going to be decided by 20 points. I think we're going to see a very close game here. Really looking forward to this one. Now, you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, they have been doing it with offense this season. Second in the NFL in total offense, also second in pass yards per game, and the Ravens are vulnerable in the secondary. The weakness of their defense is that secondary, and Ben Roethlisberger lit up the Baltimore secondary just a few weeks ago, that 20-point win for the Steelers. Baltimore's 20-point win came early in the season. That was either week 2 or 3. The most recent game was a Pittsburgh win, and it was not particularly competitive. Roethlisberger, as we said, absolutely torched this Baltimore secondary. But you know what? Pittsburgh, they're pretty weak in the secondary as well. The Steelers, 28th in passing defense, so Joe Flacco in this Baltimore offense certainly going to have an opportunity to make some things happen, and they're going to have to. We're going to have to see something out of the Baltimore offense in this game. Throughout most of the season, the Ravens played very well offensively, but the offense has sort of fallen asleep over the past month. They scored 20 points or fewer in each of their past 3 games. As we said, the Steelers very good on offense, so we're going to need to see something from Joe Flacco and this Baltimore offense if the Ravens are going to have any chance here. Now, interestingly, when the Steelers played the Bengals on Sunday Night Football, that game was for the AFC North. Pittsburgh ended up winning. Halftime of that game, Rodney Harrison, great safety who played most of his career with New England. Well, I suppose he split his career between San Diego and New England. But Harrison now an analyst for NBC Sports, I believe it is, whatever it is, Sunday Night Football in America. Harrison, Tony Dungy, Dan Patrick, I'm sure you've seen it. Anyway, Rodney Harrison at halftime of that game, he said that both Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, even though the winner of that game was going to host a playoff game, he said both of those teams would rather play Indianapolis. Of course, the loser of that game, which turned out to be Cincinnati, they had to go on the road to play the Indianapolis Colts, while the winner at home, and they got the Baltimore Ravens. Well, Rodney Harrison said, well, you know, even though whoever wins this game will be at home, whoever wins this game will be facing the Ravens, and I think both teams would rather face the Colts. I thought that was very interesting because you look at the Indianapolis Colts, they're playing at home this week. They've got a great offense. They lead the NFL in pass yards per game. They have one of the best young quarterbacks in the game in Andrew Luck. It just seemed to me that either the Bengals or the Steelers going on the road to face Andrew Luck and the Indianapolis Colts, that might be a tougher matchup than a home game against a Baltimore team that hasn't played their best football here lately. The Ravens not playing very well in December. But Rodney Harrison said, well, you know, the Ravens, a veteran quarterback, that great front seven on defense. They've all been there before. They all know what it takes. And I guess that's true. I thought it was an interesting perspective there from Rodney Harrison. Now, Tony Dungy turned around and disagreed with him. But anyway, I thought it was an interesting thought from Rodney Harrison. And indeed, the Baltimore Ravens do have a veteran quarterback, veteran receiving core. They've been here before, and they have a great, great front seven on defense. So I think this Ravens team, a very, very dangerous team right now, even though we haven't seen a lot out of their offense over the past few games. I'll tell you what, this number is 3 right now on BETDAQ. I've seen it at Pittsburgh -3.5 at some other sports books around the world. If it gets much more than 3, it's going to be very hard for me to bet on the favorite here. I do expect a close, tight game, and the points could come in handy. Whichever team turns out to be the underdog here, obviously it's Baltimore, especially if the number turns out to be 3 or more. I'm going to be taking a long, hard look at the dog. Again, I do expect a close, competitive game. I mean, these are bitter rivals, and even though both of their games this season have been decided by 20 points, you look at their last 10 matchups, I believe 6 of the last 10 matchups between these two teams, correct me if I'm wrong, it's either 6 or 7 of the last 10 matchups between these two teams have been decided by 3 points or fewer. I think we're going to see another great game here on Saturday night. Let's talk about the other AFC matchup. We just hinted at it a second ago, the Bengals going on the road to face the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts a 4-point favorite on BETDAQ, 49.5 the total here. These teams have already met this season in Indianapolis back in Week 7, and it was not competitive. Colts coming away with a 27-0 win. That was Indianapolis' best performance of the season. However, the Colts here in recent weeks not playing all that well. Now, they did pick up a win over Tennessee last week, but 2 weeks ago they were beaten 42-7 by the Dallas Cowboys. Cincinnati, on the other hand, yes, they lost on the road in Pittsburgh last week, but an impressive home win over Denver the week before last. The Bengals have been a very, very unpredictable team this season. Unpredictable, unreliable. Over their first 3 games, they look like the AFC's best team. They had a Week 4 bye, and I remember during that Week 4, we were talking about the Bengals. They were so dominant in their first 3 games. We were talking about them as a potential Super Bowl favorite. But then some really puzzling performances over the course of the season, one of those being the 27-0 loss to the Indianapolis Colts. Then a few weeks later, they lost a home game, 24-3 to the Cleveland Browns. So just when you want to get behind this Cincinnati team and believe in them, they lay a real egg. And here they're just a 4-point underdog on the road. Andy Dalton, Cincinnati's quarterback, still stands out to me as the weakness of this Bengals team. And every week when you handicap a Bengals game and you're making the case for the other side, you always say, well, here we have quarterback X versus Andy Dalton. Last week it's, here we have Ben Roethlisberger versus Andy Dalton. Who do you want to trust? Of course, most people would say Roethlisberger. The week before it was, here we have Peyton Manning against Andy Dalton. Who are you ready to trust? No-brainer answer there. The answer is Peyton Manning. Here again this week we have Andrew Luck or Andy Dalton. Who are you eager to trust with your money? Of course, it's a simple answer. The answer for just about everybody is I'd rather trust Andrew Luck, especially when the Colts are playing at home. But I'll tell you what, this Cincinnati defense has been playing some pretty good football here over the last 6 weeks. They haven't turned it around quite to the degree of the Carolina Panthers, but they are playing much better right now than they were early in the season. And as we mentioned, the Colts have shown some troubling signs here these last 2 or 3 weeks. Not sure they're playing their best football right now. I have a feeling the Colts are going to be a very popular public bet as this week goes along. Again, I think people are going to look at the fact that they beat the Bengals 27-0 earlier this year. I think people are going to look at the Andrew Luck versus Andy Dalton part of this whole thing. I think people are going to look at the lack of success the Bengals have had in the playoffs. I believe it's 4 consecutive years now they've been one and done in the playoffs, either 3 consecutive years or 4 consecutive years they've made the playoffs but have lost their first round matchup. So again, I expect the Colts to be a popular public bet, but the Bengals have been very unpredictable. You never know when they're going to come forward with a really good performance. And again, I'm not sure I like what we see out of the Indianapolis Colts over the past few weeks, over the past couple of weeks, I guess. The few weeks, they've been playing plenty well over the past few weeks, if you stretch it back to 6 or 8 weeks. But they did not look good in that win over Tennessee last week. I know they pulled out the win, but the Titans, probably the worst team in the NFL, and the Colts struggled with them for a while. And again, their worst performance of the season just 2 weeks ago. They were embarrassed in Dallas. So it's far too early for me to make a final decision on this game. As of right now, this is probably my least favorite game of Wild Card Weekend. But I tell you what, the Colts, it just feels like too many points right now to me. Not sure the Colts... Well, I shouldn't say that. It's Tuesday right now. Come Friday or Saturday, I might be saying Indianapolis -4, a really good-looking bet here in my opinion, but I'm just not going there just yet. Keep in mind, in their last 3 playoff games, this Indianapolis defense has allowed 52, 42, and 42 points, and just 2 weeks ago, they surrendered 42 points to the Dallas Cowboys. So, unpredictable, tough-to-call game there in Indianapolis. But let's move on now. Plenty of time to get to that Bengals-Colts game over the next few days. We'd like to touch on this Detroit-Dallas game. The Cowboys hosting the Detroit Lions. Dallas a 7-point favorite on BETDAQ. 48.5 the total here. The question we all have to start with is, how is Detroit going to score enough to keep up with the Dallas Cowboys? Because if you haven't been paying attention, and I'm sure you have, this Detroit offense has been really, really bad this season. And the blame has to go to offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi, doesn't it? I mean, I think we can now say, now the Detroit Lions have played 16 games, that Joe Lombardi did a terrible job this season as offensive coordinator in Detroit. The reason I think we can say that is because we've seen this same collection of players. I mean, literally the same collection of players have a lot of success before. I mean, the Lions have been a top 10 offense really every year since Matt Stafford has come into the league. Stafford himself has led the NFL in passing before, and here he's surrounded by the same weapons. Still got Megatron out there, Reggie Bush in the backfield. His role has been lessened this year because of the emergence of Joique Bell. The Lions finally have a bell cow running back, no pun intended, in Joique Bell. He's run very well. And they have a complement on the other side of Calvin Johnson that's better than they've had in the Matt Stafford era. I'm talking, of course, about Golden Tate, who's had a great season. So you look at the skill position talent here in Detroit, they seem to be loaded. yet they have not been good at all offensively. They've scored 24 points or fewer in 13 of their 16 games. The Dallas Cowboys have been very good on offense this season. So again, we've got to ask ourselves, how is Detroit going to be able to score enough to keep up here? And quite frankly, I'm not sure they will be. I have an early lean in the Dallas direction in this game. You've probably heard that Ndamukong Suh, the Lions' best defensive lineman, has been suspended from this game for that stomp on Aaron Rodgers last week. Not sure if you saw that. A total dirty play from Suh. I mean, we expect it now out of Ndamukong Suh, but he sort of drifted back there with his right foot and stepped on him. He could have sold that as an accident, but then when he took the second step back with his left foot and then picked his right foot up off the ground, thereby putting all of his weight on Aaron Rodgers, clear to anybody who was watching that was intentional, and I do believe Suh deserved what he got, which was a one-game suspension. But that's really going to hurt the Detroit Lions in this game. Of course, the defense has been the strength of this Lions team all season, second in the NFL in both yards allowed and points allowed, and the strength of the Detroit defense is their front seven. They're only average in the secondary, but they have been great in the front seven, great against the run, and Suh is their best player in that front seven. The Dallas Cowboys have an excellent offensive line. They've been a run-first offense this season. DeMarco Murray leads the NFL in rushing yards. So this may be more than any other game or any other opponent you can think of. I mean, the Detroit Lions badly need Ndamukong Suh in this game against this Dallas offense, this Dallas offensive line, and DeMarco Murray, but they will not have him. So I think that's a big loss for the Lions in this game. As I said, have an early lean towards Dallas here, even though the 7-point number is the biggest number that we see on any of these Wild Card Weekend games. Well, there you have it. Those are some of my thoughts here on Wild Card Weekend. Do want to remind you, we're going to take a look at all 4 of these games in great detail, so please do check back with us over the next few days. It's playoffs. It's a playoff time. I love playoff time, as I'm sure most NFL fans do. We'll be following it in great detail here at BETDAQ Tips, both with videos, some written articles, just about everything that you can imagine that you'd want from an NFL fan in terms of covering these playoffs. We will try to do here at BETDAQ Tips. By the way, if you have any comments or suggestions for us, anything you'd like to see here on the site, don't hesitate to reach me. I can be reached at john@betdaqnfl.com. That is JOHN @betdaqnfl.com, or via Twitter @BETDAQNFL. Well, folks, enjoy these playoff games. Please do check back with us over the next couple of days for detailed previews. Until then, for BETDAQ NFL, I'm John Arnette.